I've got you under my skin. I have got you deep in the heart of me. You're so deep in my heart that you're really a part of me. And I've got you under my skin. I've tried so not to give in. You know, I said to myself, this affair ain't gonna go so well. But why should I try to resist when, baby, I know so well?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Straight Talk here on The Voice, 8:30 a.m. WEEU and online at WEEU.com. It's Nick Lawrence, folks. We do this every week at this time, and I try to bring you the very best in programming with guests from literally all over the country and the world. You know, every week I get excited about doing these things because I get to meet some really, truly incredible people, and tonight is not going to be any exception to that. I love talking to people, and I met this lady just a little while ago, and she is an internationally recognized love and relationship expert. She's an award-winning author of Daily Affirmations for Love and Overcoming Self-Sabotage. She has over 30 years of experience as a psychologist and life and business coach, and she's helped thousands of individuals and couples to reach greatness in love, relationships, and world-class performance, and was awarded Strathmore's Who's Who Worldwide Professional Life Coach of the Year. Now, we can go on and on about her credentials. Obviously, we only pick the best people to be on this show. Tonight, we're going to be talking about her latest book. It's called Overcoming Self-Sabotage, How to Jumpstart Your Love, Happiness, and Financial Success. Our special guest tonight is Dr. Mamiko Odegard. Mamiko, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, it's exciting to talk to you. First of all, because when I met you, I really enjoyed speaking with you when we met each other, and then now to actually have you on the show and talk about your latest book, I think is a great thing. So, Mamiko, one of the things we always do, since not everybody would know you as well as I know you, please tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us where you grew up, a little bit about your life, how you decided to become an author and a psychologist, all that good stuff.
Oh, wonderful. I became very passionate about learning to love and accept myself, and because what happened is that when I was 7 years of age, I immigrated to the U.S. from Japan. And at that time, I looked different, I didn't speak the language, and I didn't know how to read or write. And I was different in many ways. And because of that, I was teased and I was bullied, and I immediately felt ashamed. Mm-hmm. I felt ashamed of my own appearance and my own ethnicity. And so I really have spent my entire personal and professional life helping myself to accept and love myself, and then helping others, because I learned the blueprint as to how to do that. And so that also it goes along with establishing deep and lasting relationships with yourself and others. And so, as you can imagine, instead of waiting for people to like and accept me, I learned to take control and to create the person that I wanted to be. And so that led to my career as a psychologist and certainly as a life coach. And I've had that vision ever since I was like a teenager, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's great that you overcame a lot of obstacles to be who you are. I mean, that's really incredible. And so I can see why when I was reading through the book that the word overcoming is important, because you yourself have lived this, that you've had to overcome a lot of things in your life to be the person that you are today. And a lot of people grow up, people with even, not necessarily the background that you've had, they get ridiculed by people and it gets them stuck in the past a lot of times. But obviously, Mamiko, you did not let that happen to you. So that's certainly an amazing thing. And now you're using all those skills that you learned to help other people. So I want to ask you a few questions, because all this stuff is so important to people. Mamiko, nobody wants to self-sabotage, right? So why does it happen so often? We tend to, a lot of people tend to do that. And you said that you do that, I do that, everybody does that.
That's right. And just so that we're all on the same page, so that your listeners know what we're both talking about when we say self-sabotage, I'd like to define that.
Sure.
For all of us. And basically, I define self-sabotage as consciously or unconsciously thinking or choosing decisions that can lead to feelings of self-defeat, regret, frustration, anger, anxiety, low self-esteem, a sense of failure, and feelings of being trapped and stuck. And so sabotaging behaviors then lead to a downward spiral of actions that we take and the results. And so the self-sabotage really can rob us of all kinds of rewards and benefits that we truly deserve. And it can be chronic, where you begin to just become automatic in the ways that you deny yourself these goals and you shortchange yourself. And you end up feeling less worthy and just dissatisfied.
So there must be some basis for it, though. I mean, people don't come out of the womb and then ultimately, when they're conscious, wanting to self-sabotage. So it seems to me that a lot of people who have had trouble, they adopt a victim personality. So how do you help somebody overcome that?
Yes, that's exactly right, that they take on that victim mentality. But I wanted to clarify here, and that is, you started out saying, well, you do it, I do it, we all do it. And we all do self-sabotage to lesser degrees. And that's what I want people to really understand, is that none of us are perfect. And because we aren't perfect, we make mistakes. Sometimes we make bad choices. We I wish I would have said this or done this. And so it can really snowball. But the thing is, for those people, and that can be up to like 50% of the population, they really do sabotage in ways that are harmful. So may I go ahead and just give you some examples of both, in terms of some that are minor and some that are more severe, and how they kind of snowball with each other?
Oh, absolutely, because we were going to go there anyway. We may as well go there now.
Okay, fantastic.
Go ahead.
So one example in terms of the way that all of us might end up sabotaging ourselves is that we really want to do a good job with the presentation at work, let's say. And so as a result, we stay up late at night getting ready for this, and then we set our alarm, and because we stayed up so late, instead of going to bed earlier, we hit the snooze button, and then we oversleep, and then we've got to jump out of bed, and then we're not really getting that good breakfast, and then we rush off to work hungry and grumpy and speeding to work. And then when we get there, we're really avoiding eye contact because we don't want to have interruptions, because we didn't get a chance to really soothe ourselves and prepare. And so as a result, that presentation may not be as smooth or as confident as you would like it to be, because we're stressed and we're anxious and we're rushed. And so what this translates into is carrying on this bad mood. And so the bad mood from the office, let's say, can then trickle down when you get home. You're grumpy, and you're short with the family that you want to be close to. So that's just something that's a really typical example that can happen to any of us.
So, Mamiko, why the original thing, though? Why didn't that person realize, you know what, if I stay up too late and I'm tired tomorrow, there's a whole sequence of events that will follow. What caused the person to not realize that and stay up late, knowing that the consequences could be the way they are?
Well, it would be great if we could all be that rational, right?
Yes.
And in control. But unfortunately, we're humans. And, I, for one, am a night owl. So once I get going, I can stay up to like late hours of the night.
Yeah.
And so, I really do want you to know that people have the best intentions, but the best intentions sometimes don't translate into best actions. And that's because the programming that we have inside. And that programming really gets into that whole talk that's inside of our heads. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we end up getting really harsh with ourselves and criticizing ourselves to the point where we begin to create a self-fulfilling prophecy that, we can't do something, or we're going to be rushed, or we're going to be grouchy. And guess what? That's what the brain doesn't know, the difference between fantasy and reality. Our brains only know what we're telling it. and that's how we react.
So what about the idea, though, of a life where people, let's say they come into the world, they were abused by somebody, or they have a lot of losses. Maybe they lost a parent or a loved one early on. Does that set up anything that ultimately where people don't feel good about themselves to the point where they end up self-sabotaging? Is that any part of the cause?
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because so much of the feelings in terms of the shame that I felt, that can be a motivator to change, but oftentimes because nobody has taught us how to deal with shame, then we go down, 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 down. And so obviously if there's abuse in the family or there's even neglect, and when I talk about neglect, for instance, the middle child is one where that person is kind of really just a forgotten child in a lot of ways. And so as a result, that person could end up trying to gain attention initially in a lot of different ways. And when they see that it's futile and they're not getting hugs and kisses and they're not getting picked up and played with and the words of love and so forth, then they might begin to internalize it, because that with young kids especially, everything is about me. And so we tend to interpret it like, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. And, that's the message that we take with us, along with other messages that we might hear if we are different in any way, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, like, you're not smart enough, you're really dumb, you're too short, you're too tall, you're too skinny, you're too fat, you're not attractive enough, you'll never amount to anything. And those are the type of messages that begin to wear on us, so that we begin to have a default mechanism, if you will, where we begin to make worse and worse choices that go along with the pattern of how we're feeling inside. So we really become, at one point, our own worst enemy and become that bully inside of us.
Well, there's a whole lot to this. We're just beginning to scratch the surface, folks. We're talking to Dr. Mamiko Odegard, and I'd like you to go to her website while you're listening to the show. It's going to be easy because it is her name. Let me say it to you. It's DR for doctor, then MAMIKO.com. That's DRMAMIKO.com. Now, Mamiko, if people go to your website, what will they find there?
They will find all kinds of valuable resources. They'll find ways that they can find more love and the ways to express those. They can find bits that give them hope, as well as some directions. And one of the things that they'll find on there today is a checklist, if you will, of different behaviors and feelings that accompany self-sabotage. So this is how you'll know whether you're self-sabotaging and to what degree.
Yeah, folks, we have a lot to talk with our guest, and if you can go to our website while you're listening to the show, that's great. If not, then certainly after you've listened to it, go to her website. Now, one of the good things about this show, though, is in case you're in the middle of just joining us, maybe you'd like to hear the whole thing from the beginning, you can go to our website at weeu.com. Just scroll down the homepage till you get to the section called Straight Talk. You'll be able to listen to this entire interview again and again. We're going to take a short break for some messages. I have a lot of questions for our guest. The name of the book is called Overcoming Self-Sabotage, How to Jumpstart Your Love, Happiness, and Financial Success. And our special guest tonight is Dr. Mamiko Odegard. We'll be right back, folks. You're listening to Straight Talk here on The Voice, 830 AM WEEU. Please stay with me.
In olden days, a glimpse of stalking was looked down as something shocking. Now heaven knows anything goes.
Good authors too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words writing prose. Anything goes. The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today,
And day's night today, and black's white today.
and most guys today, that woman prize today.
Are just silly gigolos.
And though I'm not a great romancer,
I know you're bound to answer
when we propose, anything goes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Straight Talk here on The Voice, 8:30 a.m. WEEU, and online at WEEU.com. It's Nick Lawrence. Folks, we're in the midst of a great conversation with a special guest tonight, Dr. Mamiko Odegard, and she's written a book called Overcoming Self-Sabotage. She's 30 years of experience as a psychologist working with people from literally all over the country, working with individuals as well as couples and families and all that great stuff, and we're fortunate to have her with us tonight. So, Mamiko, that song is kind of like a strange song in a way, but how much does what's going on in society affect our opinion of ourselves? Is it the times that we live in? Does that shape us in any way?
I am so glad, Nick, that you brought that up, because one of the things that's going on in society, and you bet, we are very influenced by society as to just in terms of appearance, for instance. If you remember way back when slimness was and being a twig was really fashionable. And
right.
So as a result, then that started a whole self-sabotage movement where it started eating disorders of people trying to be so thin. And luckily, now we've changed where we have the much healthier, more athletic-looking body image. But the thing is, because of what's going on in the media, they really influence us. And this is a great time to bring up one of the things that's coming out, and that is that victims are starting to speak and to make accusations towards their perpetrators. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I want people to know, because that whole statistic of being sexually harassed or sexually abused, that can happen in 1 out of 5 individuals.
Wow.
And so it's really important to know that if that's something that has happened to you, then, you don't have to live in shame and fear about it, or even anger, because even the people that are coming out years and years later, which is 20 years, 30 years later, will complain about carrying all this rage inside, mm-hmm. and anger and the blame and the guilt that they put themselves in. And one of the things that I want people to know is no matter what's happened to you, even if you've had trauma like this, I don't want you to blame yourself. It's not your fault. You're not damaged goods. And that this is a situation that happened when a more powerful, dominant person really took advantage of a person that was somehow perceived as being weaker or being more vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so, when you didn't speak up at the time, many of you couldn't. And the reason you couldn't is because oftentimes the abuser would be a parent or a relative. And so you kept that secret for years and years and years. And so I want you to know that, this is the time for you to really just be at peace and not carry that shame any longer, because what you're doing essentially is, and when I talk about shame, I'm talking about feeling inferior, feeling less than, feeling different in some way. Mm-hmm. And what you're doing is you're really carrying that shame of the perpetrator. This is not your shame to carry.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned all those things, Mamiko, because it is certainly an important topic. And I think, what you said is true. In times past, women especially didn't feel that they had a voice, and that's why they never said things, or they took the shame on themselves as if they were the cause of that kind of an attack or an assault by someone. But today, I think, especially with millennials and younger generations, they're more willing to be outspoken. They're willing to not take that kind of abuse in a sense, or if they've been abused, they're willing to talk about it, which probably in the long run is a good thing. So, Mamiko, there's so many things to talk about here. I want to make sure I can get to some of these. Most of us, Mamiko, have been taught that everybody else's needs are more important than our own. Especially we learn that in most of Western religions. I'm not sure what it's like in Eastern type religions, but in Western religions, we're taught that the other person's needs are more important than our own. So, how do we strike a balance between what the needs of others are versus our own personal needs?
Well, I am, again, so happy that you mentioned this, Nick, because this is problematic for almost everybody, and that is we are taught to not be selfish, to put the other person first, as
Yeah.
you say. And so one of the things that I want you to know is that's an operating rule, just like we have on computers, as to how we are soft-wired in there. That software about how we need to think about the other person's feelings, and especially women, take care of your men, take care of your children, so forth. And so what I'd like to do is to go ahead and give you a new definition of the word selfish.
Okay.
So that instead of thinking of selfish as something that's really wrong, I want you to begin to look at selfish as reframing it into a positive way of self-care, because only you know what your needs and wants and the results that you would like to have. And so instead of waiting for somebody to give that to you, when you take responsibility for your thoughts, your feelings, your needs and wants, well, guess what? You have a much better chance of actually achieving what you want. And when you do, believe it or not, you give a gift to everybody around you, especially your family, because all of a sudden you're taking the pressure off of others to meet your needs, to make you feel happy, to make you feel calm, whatever. And emotions are contagious, so that when you're happier and you're just full of well-being, then that translates to everybody around you. Mm-hmm. They feel happier. So it's a gift that you give yourself, is to be selfish in a positive way. And one of the things that I want to mention, too, is that years ago, I had a client that I worked with who just couldn't use the word selfish. And so she actually came up with this new word called self-full. So I love that.
Yeah.
So that I want you to just think of it that, okay, I'm really being self-full now because I'm mindful of where I am and what my thoughts are and what is it that I'm needing, and I give myself permission to get those, because that way I'm spreading more love to myself and my family.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool what you said there. In other words, I put it in a different way in my question, in another question I have for you, but really basically what you're saying, when we change and we get better, when we develop ourselves or we become more psychologically sound, let's say, and more emotionally balanced, we're not the only ones who benefit from that, Mamiko. Everybody around us benefits from that. So in a sense of by being self-full, you're also being altruistic, because other people benefit from the fact that you're doing better, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Love is the gift that keeps on giving, and it spreads all around for sure.
Yeah, that's such important stuff. So I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, but let's suppose somebody does feel that sense of guilt or that sense of shame. How important is it to have, again, we're always taught to forgive other people for what they do to us, and that certainly is important to do. But what about the forgiveness of self? Does that play any role?
Oh, that's absolutely important, is for you to forgive yourself. And in fact, that's one of the necessary steps for you to really be the person that you can be. And because if you are feeling guilty or feeling shamed, then you're carrying this burden, and it's almost like you swallowed a poison and it's just killing you from the inside out. And it's one that's just where you just feel terrible day after day after day, year after year. And so, yes, absolutely, you've got to be able to take charge and to know that no matter what sort of shame that you have, there's nothing that can't be forgiven. And you've got to start with yourself.
Yeah. So forgiving oneself, though, is not the same as making an excuse for one's behavior, because sometimes people can get those two things confused. Self-forgiveness, or forgiveness of self, and self-love, those are positive, important attributes that we need to develop for ourselves, right? Where excuses for our behavior exonerate us unreasonably for things that we've done.
That's right, because they're false reasons that we give ourselves for why it's okay, because we're justifying our behavior.
Yeah.
And instead of justifying, I'm saying that we come to peace with it. We can let go, and then by letting go of the pain that's inside, then it allows that space for new growth to take place, where you can really accept and respect yourself.
So, Mamiko, this question's a little bit off the target, but maybe not. Has there been any research done on kids who are orphans? either orphans, from another country, orphans in our own country, and what their self-esteem is, or how they see themselves, or any things of self-sabotage. Because I'm thinking, you mentioned earlier that a lot of times kids in orphanages don't get that love, affection. They're not picked up. They're not coddled. They're not truly told that they're loved. So how does that affect orphans? I don't know if there's any data on that at all. Do you know?
Oh, that's really perceptive, and it's a great question, Nick, because early on, there was a psychological study that was done at an orphanage, and what they found is that babies then were really withdrawn, and they felt like stiff as a board when you would pick them up because they weren't used to being held.
Okay.
And so can you imagine these kids then growing up, because what they're doing is, the emotions, the body never forgets. And so as a result, someone goes to hug you or get close to you, and you can see these people stiffening up visually and emotionally. They really tighten up, and so they're afraid of really being abandoned. They're afraid of that they're not good enough, and so that can be a start for all kinds of different identity issues, esteem issues, love issues, and interpersonal relationships, because these are the kids that are really vulnerable in terms of allowing themselves to trust another. Because if you've read things about orphanages and foster homes, so many of the kids end up getting mistreated in the hands of their caregivers. Mm-hmm. And so it's very difficult for them to trust, and that's where they grow up in terms of even things like love addiction and just wanting to just be with anybody that's going to pay attention to them no matter how badly they're treated. Mm-hmm. Or maybe even using sex as a way to get close to somebody when that's really not what they're wanting. Mm-hmm.
Well, I know we're going to talk. I want to talk to you about relationships in the, in our third segment tonight, because all that stuff is important, and how self-sabotage plays into relationships. How does it affect relationships, and all those things like that. But as you're talking, Mamiko, it's just interesting to me that we forget sometimes how important that childhood is and how important the beginnings are. Now, you went through a difficult time in your life because you came from another country and were maybe not originally accepted by people because you look different than the overall American society, let's say, in a way. But we forget how important that childhood development is.
It absolutely is, because that childhood development really affects our self-esteem. And what I want you to know is that when we self-sabotage ourselves, it's really an outward sign that the self-esteem, which is equal to self-confidence, and believe it or not, each of those are equal to self-love. And so if you don't have self-love, then we're not going to have that esteem and that confidence. And so we end up then sabotaging ourselves, because the reality is that you cannot outperform your self-esteem. Mm-hmm. And going back to the childhood segment that you were talking about, then it's not just one source of shame that people will experience in their childhood. Sometimes it's about appearance. Sometimes it's the fact, especially for boys, that they're not strong enough, tall enough, heavy enough, athletic enough, and they can feel a real sense of shame about that. And I felt, as an example of shame, as I became older, I actually failed the fourth grade. Because that's when academically things get more difficult. And I was so ashamed of that for years and years and years. And so what I want people to know is to, no matter what it is that you've experienced that's causing you shame from your childhood, then you can use those lessons that you've learned to really just propel you to be better and better, and to be the best that you can be right now.
Mm-hmm. So, Miko, so much more to talk to you about. We just have about a minute and a half till we go to a break. So tell people again about your website. I think you have a special offer you want to offer our audience, don't you?
Yes, exactly. And just in case people have difficulty with my name, or you're driving or something like that, then one of the things that I want you to think about is Act on Love. Mm-hmm. And so you can go to actonlove.com, which takes me to the Dr. Mamiko website. And there's a special offer that's there for you. If you pull down the services menu, there's a 5-week course on overcoming self-sabotage. And it is just full of information. I'm here to hold your hand, if you will, to really be by your side and just guide you through every step, because that's the problem, is that nobody's ever given us the actual steps as to how do we become our best selves and to overcome self-sabotage.
Yeah, so many good things. Folks, we're talking to Dr. Mamiko Odegard, and she just gave you another website that might be more easily remembered by you, actonlove.com. actonlove.com, or you can go to her website, and it'll go to this other website, which is drmamiko.com, drmamiko.com. Either way will get you to this incredible woman where there's plenty of information. She's offering you a special arrangement there. So you're listening to Straight Talk here on The Voice, 8:30 a.m. WEEU, online, WEEU.com. I'm Nick Lawrence. We do this every week. I try to bring you people just like our special guest tonight. So we're going to take a short break for some messages. I know you're not going to go away, and we'll be right back.
Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy. Nothing you can make that can't be made. No one you can save that can't be saved. Nothing you can do, but you can learn how to be you in time. It's easy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Straight Talk here on The Voice, 8:30 a.m. WEEU, online, WEEU.com. Folks, it's Nick Lawrence, and don't forget one of the great things about our show, especially if you're just joining us, you'll be able to listen to this entire interview again and again by going to our website at WEEU.com. And just scroll down the home page so you get to the section called Straight Talk. It's in the podcast section of the website. Now, this stuff that we're talking about tonight with our special guest is so important to all of us. All of us have a personal history. We came into this world, and if we're still here, we have things that have affected us, and that's why we're talking to our special guest tonight, Dr. Mamiko Odegard. She's written a book called Overcoming Self-Sabotage: How to Jumpstart Your Love, Happiness, and Financial Success. So, Mamiko, I'm back with you. That song, All You Need Is Love. How much is that just pie in the sky talk, or does love play an important role in helping us overcome self-sabotage?
I had the biggest smile on my face while you were playing that song, and then the question that you just asked me. And yes, love has everything to do with our well-being. When you have love, it's like a drug that we really take. And so the endorphins are going, the serotonin's going, and there's just no other feeling like being in love and being loved. And so that's what I want you to feel, because you can really energize yourself. And believe it or not, I actually work with elite and professional athletes. And that's my motto, is loving yourself to success. Mm-hmm. Because when you can do that, and you truly can learn how to accept and love yourself, then you can really do the impossible as to what you thought in the past was impossible. You'd be amazed and you'd marvel as to all the feats that you can do. It's just really marvelous, because it's such a natural high that you want to smile, you want to share, and it just keeps propelling you to greatness. And then you pay it forward with others that you meet.
So, Mamiko, how does self-sabotage manifest in relationships, or how does it affect relationships? Does it affect the choices we make in relationships, the way, once we're in a relationship, the way it manifests itself? How does self-sabotage affect a relationship?
Nick, it's all of the above, as they say. So that if you start out with a single person, then what it does is self-sabotage can really affect the choice that you have in partners. You've known countless people who make the wrong choices over and over and over, and you kind of want to pull out your hair. Like, why can't that person see how this individual that he or she is choosing is really not supportive of her or him, and put that person down and is controlling. And so this is the thing that when there's feelings that are coming back, and oftentimes you're reliving and replaying the issues that are from childhood, then it gets you into situations where you try to replicate that whole family that you came from, the family that you were born into, and you go after people that are unhealthy because that's what you know. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, there's a whole spiral that comes down, because once you start doing that, people start looking at you and blaming you and saying that it's your fault. Look at the type of people that you're choosing. But it really is something that you can change about yourself. And it's got to start from inside out, for sure.
I'm just going to say that whole scenario, though, is it's not something that somebody's necessarily conscious of. So one of the things you always talk about, and I think we'll get into the details of this, is self-awareness, or awareness of what's going on. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that now.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest guard that you can have against self-sabotage is for you to just be aware, because just notice that all change starts with awareness. And so if you can begin to be aware on a moment-by-moment basis as to what you're thinking and saying to yourself, that will give you a picture. Because what happens is that oftentimes you get a false image or a false label that you begin to put on yourself about who you are. And so you start thinking that you're ugly, that you're not lovable. And so you become desperate, and you're going to go after whomever if that's the message that's in your head. And so you've got to be really aware of what that message is. And then you have to learn how to change it. So one of the things that's a real quick tip that I want you to know is that people who get stuck in relationships oftentimes will ask circular, non-ending questions. And this is especially true if there are feelings, especially with what's going on in the news now about people being accused, and you might begin to think, well, gee, my husband or my wife has been spending a lot of time out of the home and spending late nights at the office or traveling. Is she having an affair, or is he having an affair? Has he ever been unfaithful? And so you start thinking those things and beginning to be accusative and being stressful, and that can certainly disrupt a relationship, so that if the person might actually think on the receiving end, well, gee, if I'm being accused of this, I might as well go ahead and have an affair.
That's true, yeah.
So there are a lot of ways that we sabotage relationships because we don't take the time to really check it out. We don't take the time to really be real and transparent about our feelings and our thoughts, and saying, honey, you're working a lot, and I would like to talk to you about that, because I want to be able to have the most trust in you, and I love you, and I want to just get your feelings on this. And so there are different tactics that you can take all along the way to help you build up antibodies, if you will, towards self-sabotage and be yourself. But it's got to start, as Nick said, with knowing what's in your head, just becoming aware as to what you're doing in action, what you're saying, and then those circular questions of, what is he up to? It's about the other person. How's he feeling? Why is he doing that way? Why is he being secretive? And then you start building up a case that may not actually be there.
Mm-hmm. So I guess it's important. I mean, we've heard an old expression used to say it takes two to tango. So it takes two healthy people, doesn't it, Mamiko, to make a healthy relationship? If one person's healthy and has done the work on themselves and the other person hasn't done any work on themselves, what are the chances that one's going to rub off on the other?
This is so crucial in terms of what I do every day, in terms of my practice, because there's kind of a stereotype that women are the ones who usually go into counseling or go into coaching. And that's happened with me, but I also have my fair share of men. And in fact, I work equally with both males and females. And what I found is that when a person is motivated and really, truly wants to change and begins to make those changes and begins to apply them with the partner or with the family, then the other person begins to change. And so in many, many cases, I'll have the partner come in and say, you know, I really love what you did with my husband or with my wife, or these are the behaviors that I'm noticing, and I'd like to be able to work with you. Mm-hmm. And so what I want you to be aware of is this term, give to get. Whatever it is that you want in life, whatever feelings, whatever actions, be the first one to show it. And when you show it with a genuine heart and you're doing it consistently, then other people are going to respond accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Mamiko, these are such good things. Now, we have about 5 minutes, not quite 5 minutes left in the show, and I want to cover, some of these specific strategies that you can give people. You told us one about awareness, how important that is. Are there other specific things you can say to help people overcome or at least become aware of their self-sabotaging behavior?
Yes. So one of the things that I wanted to get back to is just make sure that you're not in a victim mentality. The victim mode is one where, going back to those circular questions, these are the questions that we can't answer. And so they spin around and around and around in your mind. Mm-hmm. And so I want to make sure that your listeners know when they get into a circular question so that they know to stop it and to redirect. So there are three of them. The first one is about yourself, and these are the why me type of questions, like what's wrong with me, why does this always have to happen to me, why can't I get over him or her, and so forth. And then the second one that's circular is about another person. Is he thinking of me, is she thinking of me, why isn't he calling, why is that person avoiding me, and so forth. And then the third one is the what if. The what ifs are the circular questions that create a lot of anxiety and angst within us because it's about the future. What if I don't get that raise? How am I going to pay my bill? And so there are ways that as soon as you notice these circular, if you can just change them to an empowering question so that you feel like you're getting back in control. And the way to do that is to go through the awareness and to help clarify your thoughts and your feelings and your needs. And you want to be able to take it in 4 steps. One is to ask yourself, what am I feeling? And am I feeling angry, scared, so forth? And then when you notice that uncomfortable feeling, say, okay, what was I thinking or telling myself? That's step 2. And so you want to write down exactly what you were thinking so that you begin to become more aware. And the third is, what am I really needing or wanting? Mm-hmm. So this is about getting to you and to your heart and to what really needs to be comforted. And then the fourth is, what would make me feel better right now? So it promotes you to action.
Mamiko, all of these things, they're just incredible things. Now, we just have 1 minute. So I know one of your power lines is to become irresistible, invincible, and iconic. Give me a 1 minute explanation of that, and we're going to have to let you go.
Okay. Becoming irresistible is becoming irresistible to yourself and others, to your partner, your coworkers, attracting your ideal clients so that they want to work with you. They can't say no. Being invincible is the second I, and that's learning how to overcome any and all difficulties and situations, because you are going to have difficulties from time to time. And the third is becoming iconic, and it's not becoming iconic and legendary when you're close to death, but it's being iconic now as a mother, a father, a sister, a worker, as a human being, that I want you to really be able to stand out and to leave that legacy.
Mamiko, such a powerful and empowering interview. You're a great guest, and I appreciate you being on our show tonight. So what I'd like you to do is just stay on the line. I'll be right back with you, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Folks, Dr. Mamiko Odegard. Go to her website. This is the easier one, actonlove.com. Think about these things. Obviously, listen to this show as often as you can and tell everybody about it. We do such good things here. We talk about all these amazing things, and I love bringing these shows to you. Folks, think about the stuff we've talked about together. Come back and visit with me again the next time. And as always, you know what? I'll see you on the radio.
I guess I thought you'd be here forever. Another illusion I chose to create.